We now know exactly why the Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas of Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin were disqualified this past weekend. Here's what NASCAR and the team said. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. There is a ton to cover this week. There's gonna be a lot of content coming your way over the next 72 hours or so. Firstly, we have to thank today's sponsor, Alka Seltzer. Check this out. Was doing some pretty cool stuff with JD Motorsports and the Alka Seltzer Chevrolet this weekend at Pocono, and they gave me one of these pretty awesome crew shirts. Awesome stuff. Alka Seltzer's available at Walmart. They're back in NASCAR, back sponsoring a race team for the first time in 19 years. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. Alka Seltzer is an iconic brand. It's great to have major brands like that invested in racing. They've been partners on this show for a long, long time, so it was really cool to see them on a race car. Gorgeous looking paint scheme you saw me talk about last week. Really great to have Alka Seltzer on the show. Again, you can find Alka Seltzer at your local Walmart. Be sure to check them out and be sure to watch the Xfinity series the rest of the season. Bailey Curry's gonna be rocking that sweet Alka Seltzer scheme a handful more times. Thanks to Alka Seltzer for sponsoring this episode. Now let's get to the news. I want to begin by discussing the exact reason two Joe Gibbs Racing cars were disqualified this past weekend. For the first time since 1960, 62 years, the race winner was disqualified and had the entire win taken away. The timing of this is significant for one, because this is the first year of the next-gen car, an all-new vehicle which NASCAR promised at the beginning would be officiated and enforced more strictly. We can add Joe Gibbs Racing to the list of teams who have messed around and found out this year. So here's what Joe Gibbs Racing said yesterday. They put out a statement explaining exactly what was wrong with their two top finishing Toyotas and explained how it happened from their perspective at least. In our review of the post-race infractions on the 11 and 18 cars at Pocono, it was discovered that a single piece of clear tape was positioned over each of the lower corners of the front fascia, ahead of the left front and right front wheel openings on both those cars. The added pieces were 2 inches wide and 5.5 inches long with a thickness of 0.012 inches and installed under the wrap. This change in our build process was not properly vetted within our organization, and we recognize it is against NASCAR's rules. We apologize to everyone for this mistake, and we have made changes to our processes to ensure it does not happen again. That statement was issued by Wally Brown, the competition director at Joe Gibbs Racing. They spell it out down to literally the inch. On both the 11 and 18 cars, there were 2 pieces of tape, what they say, about 2 inches wide, 5 inches long, something like this, installed underneath the wrap on the lower corners of the front end of the car, and that's what NASCAR busted them for. NASCAR did say Sunday night that the material they found on those 2 cars they believed would give them small aero advantages, which at Pocono Raceway, one of the biggest, fastest tracks on the circuit with a ton of just straightaway time, any tiny aero advantage can make up serious time on the racetrack. Obviously, we don't know exactly what kind of advantage this gave. We cannot quantify. We cannot say, oh, well, these little pieces of tape gave them, an extra 0.003 a second or lap. I don't think there's any way we can go back and try to quantify what kind of advantage they may have gotten from putting these pieces of tape on the front of the cars. But Joe Gibbs Racing spells it out right there. There were pieces of tape in a place they should not have been. That is clearly against NASCAR's rules. And Joe Gibbs Racing also confirmed yesterday that they will not appeal this penalty. The deadline to submit an appeal came and went. So Joe Gibbs Racing will take the disqualifications. They will not attempt to appeal. I'm a little surprised. I know the teams have to pay like a tiny bit of money to submit an appeal. I don't think it's that much, certainly by NASCAR race team standards. I'm a little surprised they wouldn't appeal to maybe see if they can get the punishment lessened. Maybe instead of a disqualification, maybe they reinstate the win and just take away like 30 or 40 regular season points. Maybe they could have tried to do something there. But no, I guess it was so black and white, JGR knew they likely weren't gonna win anything on an appeal, so they said, why bother? I do want to applaud Joe Gibbs Racing and NASCAR for being transparent and explaining exactly what the piece was, exactly where it was placed, exactly how it may have given the team an advantage. I appreciate the transparency. As fans, we deserve to understand why the guy we saw cross the finish line first doesn't get credit for the win, so I appreciate them opening up and giving us this peek behind the curtain. Now, of course, when they do give us this transparency, this is probably why they typically aren't so transparent, it allows us fans to maybe ask some questions. The only real question I have, because obviously putting tape right there, it's against the rules, could potentially give you a small aero advantage at a highly aero-dependent track. I'm not arguing that, but my only question is, why didn't the OSS, or the laser scanning at pre-race, how did that not pick this up? Like, I understand the tape was put underneath the wrap, so you couldn't see it with the naked eye. It was covered by the paint job. But if it was supposedly there to kind of deflect air a slightly different direction, you know, the laser scanning is supposed to measure every piece of the car down to the nearest millimeter to see if it's out of alignment. I guess I'm a little surprised it didn't pick this up. Maybe it was such a tiny little bend that maybe it couldn't. Maybe it was such a minuscule bit of warping or whatever. Maybe there was no way for it to pick it up. It was just that tiny of an advantage. But either way, that's my only question, is how I'm a little surprised it wasn't picked up in pre-race. I understand because it was underneath the wrap and they don't remove the wrap until post-race inspection. I understand how they didn't see it with their eyes. I'm just a little surprised the scanning system didn't maybe notice some sort of irregularity, but maybe it was just that minuscule of a violation. I don't know. Any black and white violation, though, is in fact a violation. I still think NASCAR made the right call disqualifying them based on everything I've said. I mean, Joe Gibbs Racing's not even appealing the penalty to try and get a lesser sentence. But I'm reminded of what NASCAR officials said Sunday night, that they don't anticipate any further penalties coming from this. You know, a few months ago, Brad Keselowski and RFK were docked 100 points, 10 playoff points for modifying a body part on the next gen. An L2 penalty, a huge no-no. Now, as of now, it doesn't sound like NASCAR is planning to issue a similar penalty to Joe Gibbs Racing. But if we look back at the rule book a little bit, you know, there's argument that maybe they could. If you look at what constitutes an L1 penalty, team-sourced parts not meeting the NASCAR rulebook, not rising to a higher penalty level, that could cause NASCAR to dock you 20 to 75 points, maybe a handful of playoff points. So I don't know, does this technically fit that description? I'm not really sure. An L2 penalty refers to modifications to next-gen single-source vendor-supplied parts and/or assemblies, not rising to an L3 penalty. Does putting some tape underneath the wrap on the front fascia, does that constitute modifying a next-gen single-source part? I don't really know how that word is defined in this context. Because if you do say they modified the front fascia, then we're talking about a similar penalty to what Brad Keselowski faced. Then there's L3, which refers to counterfeiting or modifying next-gen single-source vendor-supplied parts and/or assemblies. So this one, you'd have to do something crazy. Because if you get hit with an L3 penalty, there's a chance your entire race team could get suspended for a week. So I don't know where this potential infraction fits in there. Again, I think NASCAR, probably because it was such a minuscule measurement that was out of alignment there, they probably feel like taking away the win at the track, the disqualification, fits the crime. That's enough punishment. But I don't know how exactly they define modifying a single source part. Like, they didn't like bend it or break or do something to it, but they did attach something to it. Does that count as modifying, changing the part? I don't know. I'm not trying to be a hall monitor here and throw Joe Gibbs Racing further under the bus. Again, I think the disqualifications were justified. This is black and white. They got caught doing something that is explicitly written out in the rulebook you cannot do. I don't care if it gave them a minuscule or virtually no aero advantage. It's still black and white in the rulebook. They got caught doing it. Per NASCAR's policy, that means you vacate the win. You are disqualified. So I don't have an issue with the call Sunday night. As disappointed as I am, we saw a great race, a controversial moment between Chastain and Denny Hamlin. Hamlin going on to get the win. I thought, put the period on that kind of rivalry, at least for the time being. And now all that's been blown up, opened back up. Chase Elliott now has 4 wins on the season. And he even told reporters yesterday he's not going to celebrate this win. This isn't the way he wants to win races. So it all leaves a bad taste in the fans' mouths. But I think it was the right call per the rulebook. It seems very black and white. I'm always advocating for more black and white calls. I think NASCAR officiated this one properly. Now, one other point I want to make. I mentioned Chase Elliott, of course, got the win. He did not go through the exact same intensive teardown that Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin's car went through. Here was NASCAR's Scott Miller yesterday explaining the post-race inspection process. He said, our procedure is to take the first and a second place car and a random car, sometimes random, sometimes not, and do the post-race teardown on them. The top 5 cars all go through an inspection process back through the OSS to make sure it's correct. The top 5 cars are always inspected, but the top 2 go through the complete teardown at the racetrack. So Busch and Hamlin faced the full scrutiny of NASCAR's inspection process, but Chase Elliott because he crossed the line third, this car was inspected, the basic stuff was examined, but didn't get quite the same intensive look over that the two Joe Gibbs Racing cars had. And Scott Miller explained why they only really scrutinized the top two finishers. It's one of those deals where we can't inspect the entire field at that level of scrutiny, or we'd be there until about Wednesday or Thursday. Keep in mind, it did take about 2.5 hours or so after the race for them to find something illegal on the two Toyota cars. So imagine we had to wait another hour for them to look through Chase Elliott's car, hour to look through the fourth place Christopher Bell's car, which actually Scott Miller also admits they did not look at Christopher Bell or Martin Truex Jr.'s Toyotas the same way they looked at Hamlin and Busch's either, because again, they finished outside the top two. So no idea, maybe they had some tape in suspicious locations on those Toyotas as well. We will never know. So again, leaving kind of a bad taste in fans' mouths. Just an odd, uncomfortable finish to what was otherwise, I think, a fantastic Pocono weekend. Saw the TV ratings this morning up 6% over last year. People were very invested in Pocono this season. M&M's went all out with their sponsorship. It was a great time at the track. Fans were in a great mood leaving. To have all this sort of weighing over NASCAR the last couple days, it's interesting. I mean, heck, one of my videos yesterday was 23rd on the YouTube trending page. Never had that happen, and it wasn't because of me, it's just because people were interested in what's going on in NASCAR. Crazy news, a winner disqualified for the first time in over 60 years. There's a ton of interest in NASCAR over the shenanigans of the past couple days, but unfortunately it's not as focused on what happened on the racetrack. The final point I want to make in this video, I've seen a lot of fans, Toyota fans, saying that a tiny piece of tape that may or may not have even given a serious air advantage, that should not justify vacating the entire win. This should maybe be a small points penalty at the very worst. Disqualifying them over literally a piece of scotch tape, that seems a little overboard, right? I've seen a lot of Toyota fans very frustrated with NASCAR in the past 24 hours. And I hear where they're coming from. Again, there's no way to quantify exactly how much, if any, of an aero advantage that piece of tape, those pieces of tape, provided. My rebuttal is that this is a black and white rule. They knew that if NASCAR found those pieces of tape there, they would get upset. They wouldn't have put those pieces of tape there and risked this penalty if they didn't think there was at least a small aero advantage to be gained. And most importantly, with this next-gen car, rules like this need to be and should be enforced very, very strictly. The whole point of the next-gen car, they can talk about how it's going to make the racing better. Oh, we want to make it look more like the real street counterparts. No, the number one goal of the next-gen was to make owning a competitive NASCAR Cup Series team more cost-efficient, especially in the long run. And if you have teams continuing to game all these little systems and find these little advantages and pour tons of money into research to find an extra 1,000th on the track, the arms race of the past 20 plus years isn't going to slow down. And the biggest teams are going to continue to outspend the smaller teams, and that disparity will remain. And it's going to kind of defeat the whole purpose of the next-gen car, somewhat evening the playing field. You know all that parity we've raved about this year? If NASCAR lets these little calls slip by without any penalty, that parity is going away eventually, probably sooner rather than later. I want to see the best drivers drive, I want to see the best pit crews change tires and gas faster than any human alive, and I want to see the best crew chiefs and engineers strategize. The goal of the next-gen car was to put the emphasis on the at-track performance on Sunday by the entire team. They don't want races being won on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as often as they had been previously. For better or worse, some will miss the kind of creative cheating of yesteryear, but NASCAR wants to run a tight ship, and for the next-gen car to work, for NASCAR to deliver on its promise to new team owners that this car will be more efficient in the future, they have to crack down on rule violations. Even small ones like this. If it's black and white, they have to crack down. They have to enforce their rulebook as strictly as they promised they would. So while it is frustrating, that little piece of tape here, costs your guy a win, costs your guy a great finish, it's the rule, and I think NASCAR was right to enforce it the way they did. I'm not naive. I know probably every car in the field, every team in the field is trying something that's maybe slipped underneath NASCAR's glance. So I know teams are still spending a ton of money on research and development and ways to game the system. I'm not naive to that, but still, the more NASCAR cracks down on obvious rule violations like this, hopefully the less of that we see. I want more emphasis put on the drivers and the people there at the racetrack on Sunday. No disrespect to the very talented, very intelligent engineers and folks at the R&D shop for all these race teams, but I'm not as interested in what advantages they find Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as I am what the drivers, crew chiefs, and pit crews, how they perform on Sunday. NASCAR is a spectator sport. We can't see the things that happen Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We all can see what happens on Sunday. That's the product NASCAR is trying to promote the most. That's what they want to see decide races. Anyway, share your thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you make of Joe Gibbs Racing's penalty now that we know exactly what they were disqualified for? Do you think NASCAR overstepped? Do you think it's fair game? They're just enforcing the rules as they're written? Share your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'll leave you guys with this great clip Denny Hamlin posted on his social media. He still has the trophy and he still has the champagne. Here he is enjoying that Victory Lane M&M's Fan Appreciation 400 champagne with the Pocono Raceway trophy and a little piece of tape in the Eagle's mouth. Denny Hamlin then later tweeted that piece of tape worth about $300,000 as far as having to lose the win, purse money, all that stuff. So not to mention points. Call it petty, call it a little childish, who cares? It's just fun on social media. I like it. Thanks for watching, you guys. I will see you in the next video. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I know we've gained a ton of new viewers and subscribers the last couple days, but we talk racing every single day. We react to races, discuss rumors, and much, much more. As always, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Couldn't be here without you guys. I really appreciate your very generous support every single month. We'll be back again possibly later today. Like I said, a ton of content coming your way over the next couple of afternoons. Got vlog from Pocono in the works right now. We've got more episodes of Out of the Groove. Last night we had our second Monday Night Racing playoff stream. So if you're into iRacing, go check out the recording of that. It was a great race at the old 2009 Texas Motor Speedway. So lots of good stuff on the channel and coming very, very soon. Appreciate y'all watching. I will see you in the next upload.